And good afternoon again. This is Tom Marino on the Tom Marino Show. Thank you for tuning back in. If you're just joining us, we're entering the second half of today's show, and I just want to welcome you all. Please visit me at tommarino.com. That's tommarino.com. And we're going to open up the phone lines for this half of the show. You can reach us at 631-451-1039. That's 631-451-1039. Give us a call. I want to hear from you. I want to hear some of the things you've been struggling with. In the first half of the show, we were talking to Josh and Kristen Newhouse, who sponsored the show today from Newhouse Restoration. You can visit them at www.newhouserestoration.com. But today I want to talk a little bit more about when change is thrust upon us. When change happens to us, we start to panic sometimes, right? When it's thrust upon us. And sometimes life throws you curveballs, and it requires us to respond with a sense of urgency, right? When we have something like a flood or a sewer backup in our home or fire damage to our home, you're automatically thrust into making changes and changing what's going on for you. And those changes need to be immediate, right? In order to resolve the issue at hand. If we don't deal with the issue, it's not going to go away, right? We've got to deal with the issue. And this is the thing that I think a lot of people struggle with in making change. In my book, I talk about the change adoption curve, which really is about, understanding where you fit on the change spectrum, okay? Not everyone changes at the same rate as other people, okay? We all have a different way of changing, right? There's some people that adopt change early. Those are your innovators, right? Those are your innovators and your early adopters, okay? The early adopter, the innovator, they're out there, they're ready for the new idea, they're ready to rock and roll, and they make it happen quickly, right? And other people are part of the early majority, right? It takes a minute, but they come on very quickly to what's happening, right? We see this a lot when companies go through major changes, when there's mergers. You have your innovators and your early adopters and your early majority that really jump on board to the situation quite soon. Then you have that late majority, and it takes them a minute to come around, right? And you have at the very far end of the spectrum, the laggards, right? It takes a little bit of time for people to make that change, to catch up to what's going on. And, it's important that you understand where you fit on that spectrum of change, right? I tend to be more of that early adopter, early majority. I always like to describe this as an example, in the example of an iPhone, right? iPhones come out, every year in September. There's always a new model that comes out. And the innovators, they're online pre-ordering. They want that iPhone as soon as it's live. It comes out. The innovators have it in their hands. The early adopters will get it in the first couple of weeks that it's out. The early majority will get it in the first 3 or 4 months that it's out. But your late majority, they'll wait 6 months, 9 months, maybe a year. And the laggards, when the iPhone 13 comes out, the laggards are still on the iPhone 7, right? So it's really, where do you fit in on that spectrum of change? And when a crisis happens, when we feel this loss of control, part of that loss of control is the sense of urgency that the situation has to be addressed with, but it may be in direct conflict with our change spectrum and where we fall on the change spectrum. If you're just tuning in, this is Tom Marino and the Tom Marino Show, and I want to hear from you. Give us a call, 631-451-1039, 631-451-1039. And we're talking today about change being thrust upon us, about the urgency of the situation and needing to adjust to change, and then understanding where you fit on the spectrum of change, right? Are you an innovator? Are you an early adopter? Are you more of the late majority? And no matter where you are, it's fine to be where you are. There's no judgment here on where you are. You need to recognize that, because that is going to help predict how well you handle the situation, right? So when change is thrust upon us, we often experience a sense of urgency to resolve the issue, right? However, when we come to the realization that something has to change, we also activate a sense of urgency, right? So whether change is thrust upon us or we choose to make the change, we have to activate a desire to change. And a lot of times in those crisis situations, that sense of urgency to clean up the mess activates that desire to make a change. It's maybe not seen fully as a change, and it's seen more as resolving the issue, but it's about making the change. Adrenalizing change in your life is driven through a sense of urgency. Why now? Why now do we have to make the change? When I meet with a prospective client, I'll always ask them, why now? Why is this so important right now? What's brought you to this point, right? So I'm going to ask all of you right now. You're out for a stroll, you're out for a walk, you're driving in your car. You need to make a change in your life? Answer this question. Why now? What is your sense of urgency that's creating this desire to change? Give us a call. 631-451-1039. I want to know what you need to change and why right now. Why does it have to happen right now? So how do we activate our desire to change, right? A lot of times I talk about activating our desire to change. It's one of my favorite lines that when I sign a book for someone, I put, activate your desire to change. Transform your life by changing and live adrenalized because you did. Right? So how do we activate that desire to change? And change activation, as I may have mentioned in the past, is the fifth step in my choice model, right? It's the fifth step in my coaching program. And it's about taking action to make the changes that you want to see in your life, right? You've got to set a plan in action. You've got to set a goal. You've got to create a situation where you're activating your desire to change. We resist change because we're protecting ourselves from the pain and the discomfort of growth. That's typically why we resist change, because we are uncomfortable or afraid to be uncomfortable. We're afraid to be in pain. We struggle with discomfort. So therefore, we don't make the change. Well, part of activating your desire to change is managing how you feel about coming out of your comfort zone. We feel safe within our comfort zones, even when we know we're capable of more. A lot of times, we don't want to activate the desire to change because we're happy where things are. We can deal with not making that extra $10,000 because of all the stress it may bring, all the growth it may bring. We're okay where we are, so we don't change that job. Where are you right now? Are you so comfortable in your comfort zone that you're afraid to activate your desire to make a change in your life? When change is thrust upon us, it's difficult for us to activate that desire to change, right? We've been talking very clearly about when we want to make a change versus when it's thrust upon us. When we want to make that change, the desire is often there. But when it's thrust upon us, urgency is what creates that desire to make the change. And this is usually where we get triggered with stress and overwhelm, is when we haven't activated our desire to change. So it's often having to deal with coming out of our comfort zone, and without that desire, we don't come out of those comfort zones. All right, so we've been talking today about activating your desire to change, especially when change is thrust upon us, and using that sense of urgency. We're going to talk more about this after the break, but I want you to visit tommarino.com. That's tommarino.com. Fill out a contact form. And if you're ready now to make a change in your life, your desire to change is activated, I want you to fill out a contact form, and I want to set up a complimentary call to speak with you. So give us a call after the break, 631-451-1039. We are live on the air, 631-451-1039. We'll speak to you right after this.
Well, give me all you got and don't hold it back. Well, I should 'cause I'm happy. Clap along.
And welcome back to the Tom Marino Show. I'm your host, success strategist, Tom Marino. Welcome back. Listen, I want to hear from you. Give us a call at 631-451-1039. That's 631-451-1039. We are live in the studio right now. So give us a call. We're talking today about activating your desire to change, right? Activating that desire to change. You know, change is sometimes thrust upon us, but we also make decisions when we want to change, and we activate that desire to change, and we answer that by answering, why now? Why now do I want to make that change? What is that sense of urgency that needs to happen, that's pushing me to make the change that I need to make? And, you know, we talked a little bit before the break about how, you know, when we're not ready to come out of our comfort zone, you know, we struggle with activating that desire to change because we're comfortable. Right? We like that comfort zone. You know, I often talk about the different comfort zones, the different zones that I move people through, right? Right after the comfort zone is this zone of fear, right? That's the fear zone, right? Because when you leave the comfort zone, you make yourself more vulnerable, and you often experience a little bit of fear in coming out of that comfort zone, right? When I started doing this show, I had fear coming out of my comfort zone, putting myself out there, right? But it's important to put yourself out there, to leave your comfort zone. You know, the thing to ask, and this is part of like adrenalizing yourself, the question I like to ask when I'm faced with a difficult decision and how am I going to activate my desire to change and what change do I want to make? The question is not what change I necessarily want to make, but what do I want to learn next from the situation, right? And whether change is thrust upon you or you decide to make change on your own, you have to learn something from it. There has to be that desire to learn, right? Because when we're living in a for me mindset, that for me mindset is all about learning, being committed to learning, being open and curious, right? We don't always know what's going to happen in an hour or what's going to happen in a day. All we know is that whatever does happen, let's learn from it. Let's use the experience to learn from it. That's what should adrenalize you to activate your desire to change. Is what do you want to learn? You know, we often forget that everything happens for a reason, right? And that everything happens for us, right? Things don't happen to us. Things happen for us. However, it's difficult to recognize that in the midst of being overwhelmed by a situation, right? When we're overwhelmed and we're stressed out and we're burning out and we feel like we're losing control of the situation, it is really hard for us to see that it's actually happening for us, right? If you have unfortunately just lost a job, I want you to understand that that happened for you because you're supposed to be doing something different. You're supposed to be moving and growing. That's what losing a job does for people sometimes, is it helps them to grow, to be propelled to the next thing. It's not the worst thing. It's difficult when you go through that. And I've been through that when I didn't have a job and I had to create a job. I made myself a consultant. I had quit a job after 60 days because I absolutely hated it. And it was more important for me to get out of the situation that I was willing to take the risk that I was going to have anything for a little bit. And that's scary. And I went into that fear zone. But at the end of the day, it really happened for me because I would not be here speaking to you right now. My activation and for my desire to change came from something that I really did not like doing. And it helped me to recognize that I needed to be doing something different. I needed to be honoring myself differently. And that's what is so important in adrenalizing yourself, is what do you learn from that situation? And boy, did I learn so much from being out there on my own. And now what I do is I help people who are struggling through that. You know, that's a transition. That's a life transition, losing a job. But I can help you figure that out as you move forward if you feel lost and stuck. But look at it as it's happening for you. It's not happening to you because you're supposed to learn something from the situation. All right, if you're just tuning in, this is Tom Marino and the Tom Marino Show. And today we're talking about moving out of that comfort zone when change is thrust upon us, activating that desire to change. So, when you ask the question of what can I learn from this, right? The next thing you have to ask is what am I really dissatisfied with, right? I really explore what the dissatisfaction is, because that's usually the irritant that you're facing that you need to make the change. Something is irritating you. Something is causing you to itch and scratch, right? That's what really brings about your desire to change sometimes, is what's the dissatisfaction? Because if something's dissatisfying you, you have the framework of what needs to change, right? If you don't like a job that you're in, or you don't like the direction that your company is headed, that's irritating you. So that's your activation to say, hey, let's change that. I want to see this happen. I don't want to see this happen anymore. I want to see that happen. I want to make the change for that. So what's the dissatisfaction? So the first question to ask yourself is, what am I going to learn from the situation? The second question is what's the dissatisfaction? Because the root of dissatisfaction, there is often a strong desire that is activated to make a change. So it's the feeling of dissatisfaction that gives us a sense of urgency that the change needs to happen now. And I knew I needed to make that change, and it couldn't wait. I was getting sick. I was getting ill. I was taking on a physical symptom and of what I was feeling emotionally. And that was the sense of urgency. My emotions got the better of me and said, whoa, wait a second, you don't want to live like this. And that was my journey to becoming who I am today and being a success strategist. Because I developed my own strategies for success, and I moved myself to success because I activated my desire to change. And the last step I want to talk about in adrenalizing your desire to change is take action. If we don't take action on the things we want to change, guess what? Nothing changes. So you've got to activate that desire by taking action. Action is in the word activate. When we seek to learn something to resolve the dissatisfaction, it's the action that we take that will drive us to change. Action is essential to beginning the changes. Setting out an action plan will get you started. Setting a goal will get you started. This is when you start to alleviate all of that discomfort and overwhelm, is by making a plan. Not everyone makes a plan, but you've got to make a plan. That's the third and final step, to take the action and make the plan. So, there's a couple of things that I just want to talk to you about before we wrap up today's show. I've launched a clothing line. I'm selling some merchandise online, liveadrenalized.com, liveadrenalized.com. I want you to go visit that website. I want you to start getting that positivity out there by living adrenalized, okay? I also want you to go to tommarino.com and fill out a complimentary contact form for a complimentary session, because I want to help you activate your desire to change. If you're not sure how to do that, if you're not sure how to activate that desire to change, go to my website at tommarino.com, fill out a contact form, and let's get you started with a complimentary session, okay? And again, please, if you haven't done so already, please follow me on Instagram, all right? Today we've been talking about a lot of great things. I really hope that in some way I'm resonating for you and helping you get through a situation that you're struggling with. Answer the question of why now? Why does it need to happen now? Because that's the thing that's going to activate your desire to change. All right, everyone, this is Tom Marino. Until next week, choose your adrenalized life.
Give me all you got and don't hold it back.